Imagine a world where East met West, not in conflict, but in a vibrant fusion of art, philosophy, and faith. This isn't a fantasy, it's the forgotten history of Afghanistan, a land that once stood at the very heart of global civilization. Today, when we think of Afghanistan, our minds often jump to images of conflict and turmoil. But if we peel back the layers of recent history, we find something extraordinary. A rich, profound legacy that shaped the world as we know it. This is the story of how Greek gods met Buddhist saints, how soldiers became artists, and how Afghanistan became the crucible of a unique and breathtaking culture. So let's journey back in time over 2,000 years to uncover the Greco-Buddhist soul of Afghanistan. This is a story you weren't taught in school, a story of a crossroads of civilizations that will change the way you see this ancient land forever. Our story begins in the 4th century BCE, with one of history's most ambitious figures, Alexander the Great. As his Macedonian armies swept across the Persian Empire, they didn't just conquer lands, they brought with them a wave of Hellenistic culture, language, and thought. When Alexander reached the lands of what is now Afghanistan, a region then known as Bactria, he founded several cities, including Alexandria on the Oxus, today's Ai Khanum. But this wasn't just a military outpost, it was a thriving Greek city, complete with gymnasiums, theaters, and temples, transplanted right into the heart of Central Asia. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented, and his generals carved out their own kingdoms. Here, in the remote highlands of Afghanistan, the Greco-Bactrian kingdom was born. For nearly 2 centuries, Greek kings ruled over this Central Asian territory, minting coins that blended Greek portraiture with local symbols, the first hint of the cultural fusion to come. These Greek settlers, thousands of miles from their Mediterranean homeland, didn't live in a bubble. They lived alongside the local Bactrian and Sogdian peoples. When their kingdom later expanded into northern India, forming the Indo-Greek kingdom, they encountered another profound force, Buddhism. At this time, Buddhism was spreading rapidly from its birthplace in India, carried by monks and merchants along the burgeoning trade routes of the Silk Road. And where did these routes converge? Right through Afghanistan. Picture this: Greek philosophers, whose traditions were rooted in logic and the Socratic method, meeting Buddhist monks whose teachings centered on mindfulness, compassion, and the nature of reality. This wasn't a clash, it was a dialogue. In cities like Kapisa and Taxila, these two great traditions began to intertwine. Greek settlers, intrigued by this new philosophy, started to embrace Buddhist teachings. One of the most famous examples is the Indo-Greek king Menander of Isfahan, known in Buddhist texts as Milinda. The Questions of Milinda is a remarkable text that records a deep philosophical conversation between King Menander and the Buddhist sage Nagasena. It's a testament to this era of open-mindedness and mutual respect. This intellectual exchange laid the groundwork for one of the most incredible artistic revolutions in human history. For centuries, early Buddhist art was largely aniconic, meaning it avoided depicting the Buddha in human form. Instead, he was represented by symbols, a footprint, an empty throne, or the Bodhi tree under which he attained enlightenment. The idea of representing a transcendent, enlightened being in human form was a conceptual challenge, but the Greeks had no such reservations. Their entire artistic tradition was built on celebrating the ideal human form, portraying their gods and heroes with stunning realism and emotional depth. When these two traditions met in Afghanistan, something magical happened. The Greek artistic skill for realism merged with the profound spirituality of Buddhism, giving birth to Greco-Buddhist art. For the first time, the Buddha was depicted as a human figure. But he wasn't just any human. He was sculpted with the features of a Greek god. Like Apollo, he had wavy, curled hair, a straight Grecian nose, and wore a toga-like robe, known as a samgati, draped in a style reminiscent of classical statues. This wasn't just a stylistic choice, it was a profound theological statement. It visualized the Buddha as both a perfect, enlightened being and an approachable, compassionate teacher. This new, humanized image of the Buddha was revolutionary. It made the teachings more accessible and relatable to a wider audience, and this artistic style would spread along the Silk Road, influencing Buddhist art across all of Asia, from China and Korea to Japan. Afghanistan was the birthplace of the Buddha image we are all familiar with today. The heartlands of this artistic explosion were the monasteries and stupas scattered across Afghanistan. Let's travel to some of these incredible sites. First to Hada, near modern-day Jalalabad. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists unearthed a treasure trove here. Thousands of stucco and clay sculptures, so exquisitely detailed they look like they were carved from marble. We see figures with serene, meditative expressions, their robes falling in perfect classical folds. We see bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who delay their own nirvana to help others, depicted with the strength and grace of Greek heroes. These Hada sculptures are masterpieces of emotional expression, capturing moments of deep contemplation, compassion, and joy. Each face tells a story, a perfect blend of Hellenistic naturalism and Buddhist inner peace. They are not just statues, they are windows into the soul of this syncretic culture. Now let us turn to perhaps the most famous and tragic symbol of this heritage, Bamiyan. Nestled in a breathtakingly beautiful valley in central Afghanistan, Bamiyan was a major Buddhist center for centuries. Monks carved hundreds of caves into the sandstone cliffs, creating a sprawling monastic complex. And into these same cliffs, they carved two colossal standing Buddha statues. The larger stood at a staggering 175 feet, the smaller at 120 feet. For over 1,500 years, these giants watched over the valley, their very presence a testament to the devotion and engineering prowess of their creators. The statues themselves were a pinnacle of Greco-Buddhist art. Their niches were painted with celestial scenes, and the figures' robes were rendered with a technique that made them appear to ripple in the wind. Pilgrims and travelers, including the famous Chinese monk Xuanzang in the 7th century, wrote in awe of their majesty. They were not just stone, they were beacons of faith and culture that drew people from across the ancient world. Their deliberate destruction in 2001 was a devastating loss, not just for Afghanistan, but for all of humanity. It was an attempt to erase a history of tolerance and cultural synthesis, a history that is more vital now than ever to remember. Beyond Hada and Bamiyan, sites like Taxila in modern Pakistan, but culturally linked to the Afghan kingdoms, and Kapisa, the summer capital of the Kushan Empire, were bustling hubs of this cultural exchange. Kapisa in particular was a treasure house. Excavations revealed ivories from India, lacquerware from China, and glassware from the Roman Empire, all found side by side with Greco-Buddhist sculptures. This wasn't a remote backwater, it was a cosmopolitan center, a global crossroads where goods, ideas, and artistic styles from across the known world met and mingled. The Kushan Empire, which succeeded the Indo-Greeks, embraced this legacy. They were patrons of both Buddhism and this hybrid art form, and it was under their rule that Greco-Buddhist culture reached its zenith, solidifying Afghanistan's role as the nexus of the Silk Road. The Kushans understood that their power came not just from military might, but from fostering this incredible cultural dynamism. Afghanistan wasn't just a passive recipient of influences. It was an active creator, a synthesizer, a place that took different elements and forged them into something entirely new and powerful. So what is the ultimate legacy of this incredible period? It's the understanding that Afghanistan's history is not one of isolation, but of connection. It was never on the periphery of world events. It was at its very center. For centuries, it was a bridge between civilizations, a place of dialogue, tolerance, and breathtaking creativity. The Greco-Buddhist art of Afghanistan gave a face to the Buddha, an image that would travel across a continent and shape the spiritual imagination of billions. It reminds us that cultures are not static or pure. They are dynamic, constantly borrowing, adapting, and enriching one another. The story of Greco-Buddhism is a powerful counter-narrative to the modern-day focus on conflict. It shows us a different Afghanistan, an Afghanistan of philosophers, artists, and pilgrims. An Afghanistan that didn't just absorb history, but actively shaped the cultural and spiritual evolution of the world. This legacy, though buried under layers of dust and scarred by tragedy, is not lost. It lives on in museum collections around the world, in the archaeological sites that still hold secrets, and most importantly, in the enduring spirit of a land that has always been and will always be a crossroads of humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of Afghanistan's glorious past. It's a history that deserves to be remembered, celebrated, and shared. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more hidden histories from around the world. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories. Let me know in the comments what part of this history surprised you the most. Thanks for watching and see you next time.